Hi, it's Richard. How to use the test swatch. Okay, this is the iPad version. It's the same as the iPhone. Up in the right-hand corner, you have your selection of whether you're using inches and centimeters. You probably are already familiar with that. But if you're not, notice that the inch is spelled out when it's selected and not when it is not selected. And same with the centimeters. It's a little fancier and it has the dashes when it's selected. This portion of the screen is going to show you the answer to the measurements that you put in from your test swatch or the sweater you've already knitted. Okay, so the most important thing on this program probably to keep your eye on is this section. This is a master stitch and row gauge. If you think of it, it looks something like what you see on most skeins of yarn. Right now, I'll zoom it up just by touching it. It's in the 4-inch and 10-centimeter row gauge, meaning per 4 inches or per 10 centimeters. And this is the R row section, and this is the S for stitches. And there we go. This upper part is where you can type in whatever you like, and we'll be doing that in a second, but right now we're just overviewing. So you'll see that in the buttonhole screen, the same. I'm looking at this section right here. When you switch between functions, that stays the same. It's because it's what's being used everywhere in the program. All right, so we're going to do just how you would on a piece of material. We're going to do this in the inch mode. So click things clear here, touch it like it says. All right, all we have to do is go to your piece of material that you've used for our test swatch. Now, if you think of it, if you've knit a piece and it hasn't worked out, it didn't come out the right stitch and row gauge, and you're going to knit it the same way over again after you pull it out, you can just measure there and you can find out what it is. That may not help you, but it depends on how you're knitting. If you're knitting to a pattern where you have to go to a stitch and row gauge, blah, blah, blah. Okay. You measure how many rows that you're looking at. So if you wanted to measure rows, you measure down the material usually, and you can see this bottom number down here, 30, is like at the bottom of your tape measure. When I pull my finger off here, it shows there 30 rows. Well, if you don't want to wait for that, watch up here in this area as I move the tape down here. See, that changes. So you can watch either the end of the tape or you can watch up here on the screen and you get it to where you're the same as the material you're measuring. So let's say you counted 30 rows and you maybe put a marker on them where you know right where they are, and you set it to 30 rows worked. Okay. Then you measure with a tape how long that particular group of rows is. This is an 1/8 of an inch segments. It jumps between them. And again, what is on the end of this tape here is going to be reflected up here when I'm moving it with my finger. So you can kind of drive this tape and look out the windshield up here on the top and see it's 3 1/8. I can't do them both at the same time because it's made to work only while you need it. So that's the length of your rows that you're doing, 3 3/8, and this is the number of rows worked. And so that's going to be first half of the gauge. Now we know what the row gauge is. Let's find out what the stitch gauge is. Same thing. How many rows are you talking? I'm sorry, how many stitches are you talking about? 30. See, it's 3, 0. And we measure it and find out that it's 3.5 inches. Okay, these are just top of my head things. So there's what the calculated row is. Right now, we're set at 20 stitches per 10 centimeter, 4 inches, 33.8 rows by 4 inches, 10 centimeters. That's what the system is set at now. This is what you just calculated. If you want to set that into your system, guess what? You press the set button. It says test swatch is now set for all calculations. You look over here, and that calculated gauge is now shown here, 34.3 S stitches, 35.6 rows. if you are rather to look at it in 1 inch per 1 inch, or it comes out to per 2.5 centimeters, you read here and the equivalent. These are exactly the same. The stitch gauge is the same. It's just looking at it per 4 inches here and per 1 inch there. So you can look at it either way. It's what we calculated. It's all the same. And now you are set at it. When you leave and come back, it's going to be, see how it's the same now in every place, all through all the other screens. Okay, so it's set up here, it's set there. And that same process could be done using the centimeters. Okay, let's say you put a lot of work into this, you know all the information about it. Well, I have a way for you to save that. If you click on either of these boxes here, they see these little detail, a list of things to know kind of. You click those and you get this spinner, it's called. So you can put in the needle size that you used when you knit this. And notice that I have equivalents, whether it's in US system. The first one is the US, and then they go across for European and so on. And then the weight of the yarn you were using, if it's a medium or bulky. And if you really want to go for it, you can put the place you bought your yarn. If it's a Lion brand, you save that, and guess what? It shows up here with the date. It has the needles and the weights. Those things we just dialed on are there. Now that was number one. Number two, you do, and you can go to stitches, you know, whether it was a knit stitch, a garter, a circular, cable, you know, the common stuff, stocking knit, right? And the texture of the material. If it's a single woven component various, or you can just put it to other if you don't really want to say anything about it. And if it's a beaver or fox material, sorry, nylon, whatever, or you can also put, you know, nothing on that if you want other, and you save it. So now all that information is here. The iPad, the iPod Touch, and the iPhone will all take a screenshot. So you click this, see this little camera thing? You click it, take the screenshot, and you don't get an error. That's because I'm using the simulator, and it does not work. But on all the real things that you use at home, this is now a photograph that's stuck into your albums. So you have a record of exactly what stitch and row gauge you were using, what the measurements of your swatch were, and this information about the date and when and how that particular, what kind of needles and what kind of yarn you did. Okay, that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed and understood.